Looking for a quick and easy way to use your pattern papers to make cards? Hi, I'm Jessica Taylor from Ink It Up with Jessica, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can make 14 cards from one sheet of 12 by 12 pattern paper. You can make 14 of the same card, like I did here, or you can create 14 different cards. But making the same card is definitely the fastest because you only have to come up with one idea. A one-sheet wonder is where you take one sheet of pattern paper, cut it up, and then use each piece to make a card. While there are lots of templates available, this is one of the easiest because you're simply going to cut your pattern paper into 14 of the same 2" by 5" pieces. So I'm using a piece of Countryside Inn paper, and I find that this technique works best with an overall pattern with no obvious up and down. So you can kind of see, even though this has lines on it and little flowers, it doesn't matter if you use it this way or this way. If I flip this piece over, you can see that this side has animals on it, so you would obviously want to use them so they're sitting straight up and not sideways. So with the all over design, it's easier to cut up your paper. If you use the other side, you'll have to think a little bit harder about which way you want to cut your paper, and then you'll also end up with two cards that are horizontal instead of vertical. So I'm going to start by cutting this at 5 inches. And then I'll cut it at 5 inches again. And then I'm going to be left with a 2" strip. So with this paper trimmer, I can cut both of these at the same time. So I'm going to take my two 5" strips, make sure that they're lined up, and then I can just cut this into 2" pieces. So from these two strips, I have 12 2 by 5" pieces. Then I can take this 2" strip and cut it at 5 inches. And then cut it at 5 inches again. So I am going to be left with this little 2 by 2 square that you could certainly use to make a different card. So now we can make 14 cards with these 2 by 5" strips. For the background of my card, I've embossed a piece of 4" by 5¼ white cardstock with the Countryside Blossoms embossing folder. So let me give you some quick paper saving techniques for this piece. When you have an 8½ by 11" sheet of basic white cardstock, you're going to cut it along the 11 side inch at 5¼ inches. And then you're going to do that again at 5¼ inches. I save these little 1/2" strips to stamp greetings on, and I like to banner cut the ends. Then we're going to flip this and cut at 4 inches. Cut at 4 inches again. Save that for later. Cut at 4 inches. And then cut at 4 inches again. So you can get 4 of these out of each sheet of 8½ by 11" cardstock. To emboss that, I'm going to pull out my cut and emboss machine. We'll use the number 1 base plate followed by a number 3 because this Countryside Blossoms folder is just a regular folder, not 3D. So I'll line my cardstock up in there. And actually with this one, you don't really have to line it up too closely. Put another number 3 on top and we'll run that through. So what I love about this embossing folder is that it has an all over pattern that one side is raised, the pattern is raised. On the other side, the pattern is indented. And you can use either side. I've used both. For this card, I actually chose to use this side where the pattern is indented. We're going to tape that onto a piece of Night of Navy for the card base. And to make that, I'm going to use an 8½ by 11 sheet. And I like to score first to save time. So I'm going to line it up at 4¼ inches along the 8½ side. And then score with my gray scoring blade. And then we'll turn that and cut at 5½ inches. So I have 2 card bases ready to go. So each of these is 5½ inches by 8½ inches, scored at 4¼ inch. Okay, so let's fold that and give it a nice crease with the bone folder. Then we'll put our adhesive on the side with the raised design. I like to use a double-sided tape, and the Stamp & Seal really seems to hold even on embossed pieces like this. So then we'll just center this right on our card base. And then we can tape our 2 by 5 inch strip on top of here. I like to use this silicone mat underneath where I'm adding the tape, because if I go over the edge, it'll just wipe right off of here instead of making my desk a mess. Okay, so I'll just glue that on here. For the thank you on this card, I'm using the 2 3/8 inch circle punch. So let me give you a quick paper saving tip for using this. I take an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of white cardstock, and along the 8.5 inch side here, I'm going to cut it at 2 3/4 inches twice. So this is going to give me strips that are 2 3/4 inches by 11. And then this last strip here that I'm left with is just going to be a little bit wider. But this way I can get 4 of these circles out of each of these strips. I find it easiest to stamp first. And I like to stamp the flowers first in boho blue ink. These flowers have a nice line in them that give them detail. If you get your stamp too inked up, then you lose that detail, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to try to just ink it up real lightly, but I want to make sure that all of the flowers have enough ink on them. Then I'll start on the end here and just stamp my flowers. These will fade a little bit as they dry. Then when I use my punch, I'm going to push that to open it, and it's easiest if you hold your punch upside down so that you can line up the stamp inside of the circle. Then I'm going to stamp with Night of Navy ink, the thank you, and both of these are from the stamp set Circle Sayings, which I helped design. So I love this one, of course. So I want my flowers to kind of come around like this, so then I'll just stamp my thank you in that blank space. Now for this card, I did layer this circle onto a scallop circle of Night of Navy. Stampin' Up! No longer carries these scallop circle dies, but what I mostly want you to know is that you can put any shape here. You could cut a square, you can use any punch or die shapes that you have, and they will work perfectly on this card. So I did pop this up with dimensionals, and you can see I even used the outside of my dimensional sheets because we don't want to waste anything. And if you have a hard time getting the backing off, just push your fingernail down in the middle, and that helps the edges pop up. So then we'll just put that here, and you can see that these flowers are a little bit blobbier than these flowers. And that's why I was saying you want to be careful that you're not getting too much ink on your stamp before you stamp it. And then the final touch is to add these little iridescent pearls. These are so shiny and fun and just add the perfect touch, I think. I'm going to use my Take Your Pick tool, and this just has some putty on it that will help pick these up. I found it easiest to kind of nudge it off where it starts and then pick it up. And then I'm going to use one big one and one small one down here in the corner. And then kind of to draw your eye across the card, I'm going to go up here and add one there. So there you go. I hope that you'll grab a piece of pattern paper and make 14 quick cards like this. You can make them all different or all the same, whatever your preference. Watch this video next for more ways to use your pattern paper to make cards. Thanks for watching.